My name is Bryan Cantor. I'm a book and audiobook publishing consultant with My Word Publishing. I'd like to run a real quick video with you today to give you some tips and pointers that you can use to review the interior layout of your book. Now, this isn't the cover on the outside, but the inside of your book and how that's laid out, the typesetting, if you will. And you'll be working with your interior layout designer. And here's some of the things that you should probably be looking for as you review and check out proof the formatting of your book on the inside. The first thing is it's a PDF document, so you're probably going to be reviewing it in Acrobat Reader. And right off the bat, one tip is just how you have this laid out in Acrobat Reader. A lot of people will get it here and they'll just start scrolling down through the book, and then they see all these blank pages, and it's like, well, what are the blank pages for? Even down here, if you get down into the chapters and things like that, that was chapter 2. And by the way, I'm using one of my own books here, Daughter of the Gods, so none of my clients have to worry about if I'm sharing their interior layouts of their books. But anyway, you see, like at the end of chapter 2, there's a blank page here. And so a lot of people are confused by that. I'll tell you what will make this a whole lot easier for you, not just for that, but for some other reasons as well. If you change the view, if you go up here to view on Acrobat Reader, and then on page display, change it over to 2-page view. Now, at the title page, that didn't really do anything. But if you notice here now this is showing you on the screen how it will be laid out in front of you when it's printed as a book. And so this will give you a much better idea of, reviewing it as if you're reading it as a book. And I'll show you a couple of things why that matters. For the first one was those blank pages. So you notice up here, now there's this blank page. Well, why is that blank page there? Well, because I wanted the maps to show up on the right-facing page of the book. The same is true of the chapters, right? I wanted all of my chapters to start on the right-facing page. Now, you don't have to do it that way if you don't want to. It is acceptable these days. This is kind of a more traditional style. It's acceptable these days to have chapters starting on the left-facing page when they end up there. But I'll take you down to, for example, chapter 3. Here we saw before where there was that blank page that might have looked a little confusing. Well, see, the chapter actually ended here. There wasn't enough text to flow over onto this page, but I wanted my pages to start on the right-facing view. And so the software automatically inserted that blank page exactly where it needed to be. One other thing that's important about looking at it in this view, your software, the software that lays these books out, tries to balance several factors. One of those factors is called widows and orphans. Those are lines down at the bottom or at the top that are kind of by themselves. Now, you'll get a few of those. You try not to get them like at the end of a chapter where you'd have, the last line here and then maybe just 3 words up at the top of the page here. Yeah, something like that. The software tries to balance that. With it also wants a balanced view, right? So it wants these 2 pages to kind of end at about the same time so that a reader that's looking at it on the page, it'll look fairly consistent as it's laid out. Now, what you'll notice here, I'll scroll up a couple of pages. See, that page actually went down farther than this next page did. Now, a reader's not going to notice that. They might notice if this page cut off up here and this page went down 2 or 3 or 4 more lines on this side. That would look out of balance. So the software does a good job of trying to balance those out between pages. If you don't look at it in page layout, 2-page layout view like this, then you'll be scrolling through and you'll notice that on one page it ends up here, and then the next page it ends down here, and it will seem unbalanced to you. If you look at it in this layout, in this 2-page format, you'll realize that that is not, in fact, unbalanced. Right. One thing I should have probably mentioned at the very beginning, when you're reviewing your interior layout, you do not need to go through here and proofread the whole book. As a matter of fact, all of your editing, including the proofreading, needs to be done before you go to interior layout. Your interior layout designer is a formatter, a typesetter. They're not there to as a proofreader or to make all the corrections that you want to make after they've started to design the layout of your book, and that can impact a change here or there, 1 or 2 lines. If you rewrite a paragraph or something like that, could change the layout for the entire chapter, potentially even other places in the book. So you want to make sure you've got all of your editing, including the proofreading, done before you go to interior layout. Now, that's not to say that you can't, if you find a misspelled word or something like that, that can't be fixed here. But this is not the primary place that should be done. The focus of that should be before you go to interior layout. Now, you'll start usually with the title page. And this is where you're going to have kind of a distinctive style. It'll be a distinctive font, maybe a layout. You might have some graphic images here. You'll probably have your logo for your publishing company down here. Obviously, your author name is there. You want to make sure these things are correct, particularly if you're working with Amazon KDP, because the title, the publishing company, and the author name need to be the same in the book, in your metadata listing on KDP, and in your ISBN registration with Bowker. So check those things over, the title, the subtitle, author name, publishing company. Make sure that those things are all the same as they are in your KDP metadata listing and in your Bowker listing for your ISBN. The next thing that you'll look at, and it's the next thing that's kind of a style issue, I'll switch down here to my first chapter. This is your chapter title page. It can be, fancy. It can be kind of plain. With mine's a novel of the Picts. The Picts had these little Pictish symbols that they had carved in stones back in the early medieval ages. So I put a different Pictish symbol at the beginning of each one of my chapters. Usually your chapters are standardized, and it's usually just probably the chapter number. If you have a chapter title, some nonfiction books do. Most nonfiction books do. A lot of fiction books may also have those. So it'd be some combination of your, chapter number and then the chapter title here. Once you check that out for the first chapter, you shouldn't have to worry about it for the rest of the book, because the software is going to standardize that throughout the rest of the book. And so you, again, check it out on your first chapter. Should be good after that. The other thing that you want to take a look at is that will also be standardized is this first line in the chapter. Now, the first thing you need to know is that first lines in chapters and first lines after a scene break always are flush left to the left margin. It's just a convention in the printing world. These will not be indented here. They'll be flush left, even if you don't have any kind of special character at the beginning or anything like that. It'll always be flush left. Also after a scene break. So you see here, I have a scene break. That first paragraph is flush left. So don't think your interior designer made an error, and don't try to get them to change it. If you do change it and you do indent this, then it's going to look very amateurish, and a lot of people who are familiar with typesetting will pick up on that. The second thing here is you'll have some kind of standardized thing that you'll use for your first line after in the chapter. Now here I've chosen to use a 2-line drop cap. That's just a style that I chose to use for my book. You can have nothing special at all. It can just start off here with the beginning, normal type right there. It can be a number of other different things. In some cases, it'll be, say, half a line or the first few words that'll be in small caps. Sometimes it'll be the whole first line in small caps. And then sometimes it'll be these drop cap characters or stylized characters or things like that. One thing that you'll probably want to do, you'll also have some kind of special formatting on the first line after a scene break. Now, scene breaks happen very typically in fiction. Nonfiction, you're probably going to have headers and subheaders to mark the divisions of your book. But here, you usually want the stylizing after a scene break to be a little less formal than whatever it is for the chapter. So because I started my chapter with a drop cap, I probably don't want to use a drop cap right here. That would be just a little bit too much. What I chose to use is the first half line in small caps. And so that's a little less formal than that drop cap. I could have just done no special styling at all right here, and that would have been fine too. If you start the chapter with, say, the first line drop cap, then you'll probably want down here just to have plain, plain lettering there, nothing special. The other, so, and once you check that out on the first chapter and your first scene, again, you don't have to check that out through the whole entire book. The software is going to standardize that throughout the rest of the software, as long as this is recognized as a scene break and as long as the chapter is recognized as a chapter break. The other thing I'm going to mention to you here is this this border out, or excuse me, this right edge out here. This is called full justification. This is where the text is taken all the way out so that it's not only justified on the left side, but it's also justified on the right side. You want this. This again is not a tradition, I guess, a standard in the publishing world. You definitely do not want to have a ragged right edge over here when you're talking about regular text. If you're talking about verse from a poem or some kinds of quoted materials, etc., it's okay to have a ragged right edge for that section. But the book as a whole needs to be full justification. Now, the way the software accomplishes this is by adding some extra spaces in between some of the words. So it might try to spread those spaces all out evenly, but in some places it might look like there's extra spacing, like right here. It's not extra spacing. It's what the software has put in. So I've had some clients that have come back to me and said, oh, and they've gone through line by line and said, there's an extra space here. There's an extra space here. There's an extra space here. No, it's there so that the page is fully justified. You want that, and the extra spaces will just take care of themselves in here. So that's not an error. It's intentional, and it's a standard in the publishing world. So that's what you want to have. Let me take a look. Full justification. First line, we talked about that. First line after the break, we talked about that. The next thing you'll want to do is take a look at your front matter. So the first piece there is going to be your copyright page. So again, here, make sure you've got your title is correct, your subtitle is correct. And then it's just, some standard information that you have in here, published by the publishing company, the publishing city and state, etc. Your publishing consultant should have talked you through the things that belong here on the copyright page. I will note, you automatically have copyrights over anything that you publish in any form. So particularly with a book, you automatically have the copyrights. You're on this copyright page, you're just asserting those copyrights to make your case a little bit stronger. Somebody steals it from you. And then you might also have some disclaimers in here, or you might have gotten permission from somebody else to use their copyrighted information. That'll be in here as well, as long as as well as the dates and the things like that. This is another one of those places, again, where your information here needs to match the metadata that you when you're setting up your title in KDP, and also the data that you have in Bowker. So the title, the subtitle, the publishing company, the author name in particular all have to be correct. And then the ISBN, obviously that ISBN is what is registered against the publisher name, the title, and the author name. So get all those, make sure all those things are correct here on your copyright page. Now, there may be some additional front matter in here. In this case, I've got a map, a couple of maps, a map on this page, map on that page. Another thing that I'd like for you to notice here, it looks like on the computer that there's extra, that this picture here, this graphic image is not centered. There's more room on this side than there is on this side. This is called a gutter margin over here, and it's because of the binding. The book's going to be printed and bound, and there's a little bit of extra room added on this side of the picture for the binding. And so when this actually appears in the book, it shows up centered correctly. So again, don't worry about this. This is not out of center. Once you get the print proof copy of your book, you can take a look at it there, and you'll see that it is in fact centered once you account for the amount of space that's taken up by the binding. The other thing I'll have you notice here is in the front matter, typically you're not going to have, either you'll have no page numbers here, or depending on what kind of thing it is, you might have a foreword or a note from the author or something like that. Typically things are not going to start, the page numbers won't start until you hit with chapter 1. They can possibly start when you have not a forward, but a preface, not a preface. Anyway, you might have some in here with a forward or a postlude afterwards, but you're not going to have one, a prelude or a postlude, but you typically won't with the rest of your front matter. You also will not have a page number on your first chapter. The page numbers are going to start after the first chapter. So, I mean, after the chapter title page, right? And so you'll have numbers up here in the corners, or they might be down here centered. They could be in the bottom corners. However, you have decided that's standard either for your genre, and you can consult with your your interior layout designer on that. You're also going to have some header information here. It's typical in fiction books to have the author on the left facing page and the title of the book on the right facing page. There's some cases where you might have parts, or you might have a multi-volume series, when those might be a little bit different. So you just want to check that and make sure that that's standardized the way that you and your cover designer, or not your cover designer, your interior layout designer decided when you were doing your layout. Okay. The last thing that I'll mention to you, the page numbers may be in some of your front matter, may be Roman numerals. Again, that's different conventions based on different kinds of books, different genres, fiction, nonfiction, different genres, and the nature of the front matter. I'll also mention that most fiction books do not have a table of contents. Oftentimes they don't have any names for the chapters, period, but they typically don't have a table of contents. It's acceptable to have one if, for example, you have named chapters, and those chapter titles kind of help tell the story, maybe even give a preview of the story, help in the sales and things like that, or the marketing. So it's permissible to have them in fiction. It's just less common. Usually you don't have them. Ebooks are required to have tables of contents. It's part of the software design for the ebook standards, as part of the navigation and being able to navigate using the table of contents. Non-fiction books very typically do have a table of contents. So you'll want to check that as part of your front matter. One thing I'll also encourage you to do these days, because of that look inside feature that you have with Amazon on your Amazon sales page, people can look inside and start to read your book. I would minimize the amount of front matter that you have. Put as much as you possibly can in the back, not in the front, because the more stuff you have in front before you get to chapter 1, scene 1, or chapter 1, line 1, you're going to end up with just bogging down the reader, and they're going to get lost in some of that stuff. Whereas, your opening hook, you spend a lot of time crafting that opening hook to capture the reader's attention. That's what you want them to see when they look in that look inside feature. So I would minimize the amount of front matter that you have, and then put as much as possible into the back matter. Finally, the last thing, after you've reviewed your, the primary parts of your book, the front matter, you'll skip back down to the back matter. All the chapters are going to be formatted the same way. If you do have nonfiction, and you have subheaders, layers of subheaders, you do also want to make sure that those came out correctly, because those are going to get tagged with, is this heading level 1, heading level 2, heading level 3, etc. So you're going to want to check those things and make sure that they're done correctly. It's possible that your interior layout designer might have tagged one of those, that should have been heading level 1, tagged it as heading level 2, and it kind of messes up the flow of your structure. So double check all of your headers and subheaders, because those are going to be tagged individually by your layout designer. And so then the last thing, again, is you're going to come back down to your back matter. For fiction, it's very common to have some kind of a reader magnet. I mean, you'll usually almost always ask for a review. Hey, if you enjoyed reading this book, please leave a review on Amazon. Always ask for the reviews. And then a lot of times you'll have a free offer of some sort, a reader magnet, something you're going to give away for free in exchange for your reader's email address. And so, there's typically a page like that here. That's and a lot of times it's most effective if that is the first thing the reader sees after the end, is your asks here and your free giveaways. The other thing is there's often an about the author page that's here. I didn't have one in this particular book because of the way that I had things integrated into the book. I didn't have that here, but you'll very typically have an about the author page. If you have acknowledgments, if you have an afterword, if you have any of those kinds of things, then you'll have those in the back matter. Again, put as much of that in the back matter as you can, as little as possible in the front matter. And again, on back matter pages, you're typically not going to have your page numbers. In my case, it was in the upper corners. You aren't going to have your page numbers on back matter. So anyway, I think I covered most of the points there. By all means, if you have any additional questions, feel free to leave a comment here below in the video, or you can send an email directly to me. My name is Bryan, Bryan, at mywordpublishing.com, and I'd be happy to address any of the issues that you might have with reviewing the interior layout of your book. Once again, my name is Bryan Cantor. I am a book and audiobook publishing consultant with My Word Publishing. Have a fantastic day.